All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and we're doing a special video report because we have an update in the effort to get a new inquest for Geoff Campbell. So let me bring on AE 911 Truth's Director of Strategy and Development, Ted Walter. He'll be talking about that. Ted, bring our audience up to speed. What is going on with the inquest now?
Hey, Andy. Hey, everybody. Well, we received some good news regarding the inquest last week. And by we, I mean Matt Campbell and the Campbell family and the family's barrister, Nick Stanage, and us at AE 911 Truth have been working with them for the last year and a half. We received a letter from the senior coroner for the West London Coroner's Court, which is the court that held the first inquest into the death of Geoff Campbell back in 2013. Geoff died in the North Tower on 9/11. He was 31 years old, and his family, ever since then, has been trying to get the truth about how he died and why and who did it. And so, as many of our listeners know, the Campbell family submitted an application for a new inquest in August of last year, just before the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And that application is still being reviewed by the Attorney General for England and Wales. Her name is Suella Braverman. And so this piece of good news that we got last week is that the senior coroner for the West London Coroner's Court, they're not going to oppose the application. They have the option, sort of, not like they have unilateral say, but they could sort of oppose the application either at the current phase or at the next phase, which is when the application goes to the High Court. So right now, what's happening is that the Attorney General is looking at the application, and the Campbell family is asking the Attorney General for her authority to then apply to the High Court for the new inquest to be granted and for the old inquest to be quashed. And so it's helpful that the coroner at the West London Coroner's Court is not opposing the application. It is definitely conceivable that at the next phase, when the Campbell family would be going to the High Court, that they would have people, different parties opposing the application on various grounds. And the West London Coroner's Court might stand up and say, well, we think we did a proper investigation back in 2013. So the good news is that they're not standing in the way. And, and I would say it's at least a signal that there's nothing wrong with the application. If there was something that was wrong on its face or something like that, then the coroner's court might be expected to oppose it or to write to the Attorney General and say, we have such and such problem with the application. So this was a fairly expected outcome, but it wasn't a given. On the other side, there was a possibility that the senior coroner for West London Coroner Court, could actually grant the new inquest herself. That is an option that does exist in British law. And so there was an outside chance of that happening. We were hoping that the coroner would, and she is not. She is deferring to the Attorney General. Our barrister, Nick Stanage, tells us that, in certain circumstances, the most progressive coroners in the land will sometimes just grant the new inquest themselves, rather than having it go through the Attorney General and to the High Court. So overall, this is fantastic news. It's a small step towards the first big outcome that we're shooting for, which is for the Attorney General to get back to the Campbell family, hopefully within the next few months, telling the Campbell family that she is granting her authority for them to then apply to the High Court for the inquest to be ordered. So that's the gist of it. And for people that don't know, the reason that this is being done at all in the first place is that the West London Coroner's Court concluded back in 2013 that Geoff Campbell died in the collapse of the North Tower, and that it was caused by the airplane impact. And so specifically what the Campbell family is disputing is that the airplane impact is what caused the collapse of the North Tower and Geoff's death. And so their overall goal through this process is to have it be legally established in a court of law, in the coroner's court in the United Kingdom, that Geoff was actually killed. The cause of his death was the controlled demolition of the North Tower on 9/11.
Right. And this is important news because what we have experienced over the years, for instance, I remember when you were doing the high rise safety initiative and somebody had asked the mayor at the time about it, a reporter had questioned him, and when he heard about it, he said he's going to stand against it. And what we've seen is whenever we try to take moves towards justice, there are entities that try to stand in the way. We have a pretty adversarial relationship with NIST. We're taking them to court right now because we're challenging their report. But what we're hearing out of the UK here is that the coroner has no intention of trying to stand in the way of this, and that is positive news. Now, what's the overall vibe, considering everything that I just talked about that we've experienced in the past? What's the overall vibe that you're feeling from this entire process?
Very, very positive overall, very promising. I mean, having been involved in a number of legal initiatives, whether it was the ballot initiatives that I worked on in New York City, or some of the lawsuits that the Truth has partnered with the Lawyers Committee on, or the grand jury petition, even our current lawsuit against NIST. I think that the inquest, the attempt to get a new inquest, stands far apart from everything else in terms of its likelihood of panning out. The law in the UK this law is designed to make it easy for families to get a new inquest if they're concerned that the findings of the original inquest were incorrect. Not that it should just be done frivolously, but if there's some new evidence that could possibly change the original verdict, or if there's any indication that there wasn't enough of an inquiry, that the coroner did something wrong at the first inquest, it's not supposed to be hard for families to get a new inquest. It's quite to the contrary. It's supposed to be easy, because you don't want families to have doubts and to wonder and to believe that the official finding, the official cause of death of their loved one is untrue. So this is not a long shot by any means. It's actually a slam dunk. If it wasn't for the political implications of this, it would be an absolute. There would be no question, and there should be no question. Like if the Attorney General returns a decision that, not granting her authority to apply to the High Court, it'll be a travesty of justice, and the Campbell family will seek legal recourse at the High Court if the Attorney General says no. So I'm personally optimistic, as is the barrister Nick Stanage, and maybe the Campbell family a little bit less so, because they've been fighting this fight for 20 years and it's very personal. But on the whole, me and the barrister and others that are involved in this are feeling very optimistic. And in particular, one thing that we haven't talked about as much, we've talked a lot about how there's a lot of evidence that was not considered at the first inquest, and we have 2,500 pages of evidence in the application. But another ground that we haven't actually talked about as much for reopening the inquest is that the coroner is insufficiency of inquiry. That's one of the other reasons that can be put forth for needing to open a new inquest. And in this case, if you go and read the transcript of the inquest that was conducted in 2013, the coroner spent maybe like 20 to 20 seconds hearing from a member of like the London police about what the events were and what caused the collapse of the building. Like it was like he was reading from a piece of paper about like just a very generic description of the events. There was actually no investigation, no evidence that was heard as to the cause of the destruction of the building. And this is the event that took Geoff's life. And so I think we have an open and shut case that there was insufficiency of inquiry. It wasn't that it was just evidence supporting the official story of that fires brought the building down. There was no evidence considered as to the cause of the collapse. And so between that and between thousands of pages of evidence that was not considered at the first inquest, that does have a reasonable chance of changing the verdict, we really do have an open and shut case here. So I'm very hopeful. And I think that it might be so open and shut that even politics can get in the way of this one going forward.
I feel the same way. Now, for our audience who may not know the entire process, really quick, tell them what's the next benchmark that we can look to in this whole effort.
So in the next few months, we're expecting that we will hear back, that the Campbell family will hear back from the Attorney General within the next few months, hopefully in the spring, hopefully not later than the summer, and certainly not, hopefully not beyond, the next 9/11 anniversary, which would make it more than a year. And if the Attorney General says yes, then the Campbell family's application will go before the High Court. I don't know if that's the equivalent of the Supreme Court, but it's it's some sort of it's a high court. That's what it's called. And then the high court, that tends to be the high court has always found in the same way as the Attorney General. So any application for a new inquest that has gone before the high court, because the Attorney General has granted his or her authority, the high court has approved. So really, we're at the most important obstacle right now. The most, this first hoop is the most important hoop to jump through. And if it happens, we have a very good chance of prevailing at the high court. And then the third phase, I don't know how long this will take. Maybe it will take a year or so, but perhaps within a year, we could be looking at the third phase, which is what it's all about, which is the new inquest. And that we're talking about, maybe a few weeks of evidence being heard, of eyewitnesses testifying. We have 5 eyewitnesses who are part of this application, although we did learn that one passed away in recent months, sadly, which we'll have more about in the coming days. Yeah, so that's a process. It's a three phases. The final phase with the inquest is what we're shooting for, and I think reasonably that could be happening within a year from now. And then if the inquest is done and the conclusion is what we believe it should be, which is that the building was brought down in a controlled demolition and that is the cause of Geoff's death, that will be the official cause of his death under, in the UK under law. And that doesn't have any automatic legal implications. It's not as if like criminal charges are then brought up or criminal investigation starts, but we think that will just touch things off, and that other 9/11 families, both in the UK and the US and other countries, will take interest, that the authorities in the UK will be politically compelled to start looking into this, as will journalists and government entities and so on in the US and across the world. So we really we have high hopes for what this inquest could do for all of the families who are still seeking truth and justice for the murder of their loved ones.
That's right. We could have a very positive and dramatic ending to it. And it's not like a movie, folks. Justice can take a little while to happen, but it's worth every step of the way. Ted, thank you so much for bringing this update to us today and for all the work that you're doing on this effort.
My pleasure and my honor. Thank you, Andy.
All right, so we're going to be doing our best to bring you updates on this matter at every step of the way. Make sure that you are subscribed to our emails. You can do that at ae911truth.org. That'll be the quickest way that you can get updates. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel to see videos like this, and spread this video around. It's breaking news. Get it out to all the alternative media sites who need to be following this important effort. But for my part, this is Andy Steele. You have a great day.